I have spent a significant portion of my life being the kind of person who stays completely under the radar. I was never what you would call a bad kid in the traditional sense, and for almost all of my adult life, I had never even received so much as a traffic ticket. However, there was a period of about a year where I shifted into a quiet, methodical criminality that I am certainly not proud of today. It all began when I took a job as an overnight security guard for a large strip mall in my hometown. I won't mention the name of the mall or the specific town for obvious reasons, but for a night owl who doesn't particularly enjoy human interaction, it seemed like the perfect setup. My responsibilities were simple and straightforward. Monitor the security cameras, perform a few nightly walks around the premises, and essentially stay awake until the sun came up. For the first few months, I was the model employee. I took the job very seriously and learned the lay of the land perfectly, memorizing every corridor and service entrance. But as I settled into the routine, the crushing weight of boredom began to set in. Most of my night was spent in the security office, listening to podcasts or watching shows on my phone while the empty, silent hallways remained still. I eventually reached a point where I needed something to add a bit of spice to the monotony of my life. That was when I discovered a fatal flaw in the mall's security system. While monitoring the feeds, I realized that one of the back doors didn't have a camera near it at all. The layout of this strip mall was unique and played right into my hands. Behind the long row of storefronts was a large back room that connected every single store directly to the security office. This meant that even though the front doors of the stores were locked tight to the public, I had total, unfettered access to their inventory from the back room. Finding that one unmonitored door got me thinking about where else the cameras couldn't see. I started a game to identify every blind spot in the building. During my nightly rounds, I would go to a spot where I suspected the camera couldn't reach and perform a ridiculous dance move. When I returned to the office, I would play the tape back. If I wasn't on the screen dancing like an idiot, I knew I had found a hole in the system. I kept a detailed note on my phone of every exact location that was hidden from view. Eventually, just knowing where the blind spots were wasn't enough to satisfy my boredom. I wanted to utilize them. I started small, testing the waters by taking a hat from a rack located in a blind spot. I opened the back door, placed the hat in a box outside, and then picked it up in my car after my shift ended. The next night, I played the tape back to see if there was any footage of my theft. When I saw that there was absolutely no video of me at all, I convinced myself that I had perfected the art of the perfect crime. For a long time, I stole simply because I could. Sometimes it would be something small, like a cheap t-shirt, and other times it would be something far more valuable, like an expensive pair of sneakers. I was careful and methodical, knowing that these stores kept inventory, so I never took too much from any single place at once. The thrill of being a ghost in the machine became my primary source of entertainment until one night, while making my usual rounds, I heard a sound that didn't belong in a locked, empty mall. It sounded like children laughing. I immediately pulled out my flashlight, aggressively searching the empty aisles and dark corners, but I saw no one. The laughter seemed to be coming from all around me, accompanied by incoherent whispers that felt as though they were being hissed right into my ear. I started yelling for whoever was there to come out, sounding like the tough security guard I was supposed to be, but the laughing only continued, mocking me from the shadows. I ran back to the security office and pulled up the footage of the store, but the screens showed nothing unusual. All you could see in the security footage was me, waving my flashlight around like a lunatic and yelling at absolutely nothing. I didn't call the police then because I wanted to catch these kids myself when they tried to escape. I knew where all the blind spots were, but there was no way a group of intruders would know how to navigate them. I watched the monitors with intense focus all night, but nothing moved. By the time dawn approached, a physical search of the store revealed no signs of a break-in or any evidence that anyone had been there. I chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me due to the isolation and decided to move past it. I had the next 2 nights off, and when I returned to work, the guard I was replacing said that nothing weird had happened during his shifts. I decided to put the incident behind me and go back to my usual routine. Around 3:00 a.m., I made my way into one of the stores, thinking I might help myself to a new pair of Vans. As I reached for the shoes in the sneaker section, I heard something swoosh past me in the dark. I froze instantly, any unexpected noise being highly alarming in that situation. I shouted, "Who's there?" into the void, but the only response I received was that same taunting laughter echoing through the aisles. I was no longer the confident, invisible thief. I was a terrified man moving erratically as I tried to catch a glimpse of my invisible tormentors. Suddenly, I saw something move from the corner of my eye. I looked down an aisle to my left and saw a small, dark figure step out from the back and wave at me. I tried to shine my flashlight on them, but they were too far away, appearing only as a dark, indistinct shadow. I told them to stay right there and began to run toward them, but in the single second I took my eyes off the shadow to navigate around a display, they were gone. The laughter and the sound of running feet continued to echo all around me, invisible and omnipresent. Then I heard one of the voices, clear as can be, speak my full name. That was the moment I had officially had enough. I realized then that whatever was in that store with me knew exactly who I was, and I wanted no part of it anymore. After hearing my full name whispered in the dark, I was no longer interested in playing the role of the invisible thief or the tough security guard. A cold, paralyzing terror seized me, and I ran as fast as my legs would carry me back to the safety of the security office. My heart was hammered against my ribs so hard it felt like it might burst. I slammed the office door shut and locked it, leaning against the cold metal as I gasped for air. It wasn't until I looked down at my hands that I realized I was still clutching the stolen pair of Vans I had grabbed in the store. In my absolute panic, I hadn't even thought to drop them. I sat the shoes down on the desk, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the mouse. I told myself I would return them as soon as the sun came up and the mall felt normal again, but for now, I needed to see what the cameras had captured. I was desperate for some kind of proof that those kids were real and that I wasn't losing my mind. I needed to see a physical person on that screen to justify the terror I felt. I began reviewing every second of the footage from the store, focusing intensely on the specific aisle where I had seen the figure wave at me. The camera was positioned perfectly to catch anyone standing there. I watched the recording play back, and my blood turned to ice. The screen showed nothing but me. I watched in horror as the recording played back images of me running around like a madman, waving my flashlight at empty spaces and shouting at shadows that didn't exist. There was no sign of another person, not a blur, not a shadow, and certainly not a child waving. According to the footage, I was completely alone, having a full-blown breakdown in the middle of a dark store. I tried to tell myself it was just a technical glitch, or that the lighting was too poor for the digital sensors to pick them up, but a deep, primal part of me knew better. The laughter had been too clear, and the voice that spoke my name had been too intimate. I spent the rest of my shift huddled in the office, the lights turned up as high as they would go, staring at the monitors until the morning sun finally began to bleed through the skylights of the mall. When my supervisor arrived that morning, I couldn't keep the secret inside any longer. I was exhausted, terrified, and desperate for help. I told her everything, the invisible children, the taunting laughter, and the bizarre events that had been escalating over the last few nights. I begged her to look at the footage with me, hoping she might see something I had missed. She sat down and watched the tapes in silence, but her reaction wasn't the sympathetic one I was looking for. She didn't see intruders. She saw a security guard behaving in an erratic, unprofessional, and frankly frightening manner. To make matters worse, her eyes eventually wandered to the desk, where the pair of Vans was still sitting in plain sight. She looked at the shoes, then back at me, her expression hardening instantly. She demanded to know why I had store merchandise in the security office. I had no logical answer for her. I couldn't tell her I was in the middle of stealing them when a ghost called my name. I just stuttered, trying to find words that wouldn't make me sound like a criminal or a lunatic. She informed me that several stores in the strip mall had recently reported inventory shortages, and that my strange behavior on camera, combined with the stolen shoes sitting on my desk, made me the primary suspect in a theft investigation. I tried to defend myself, insisting that the intruders were real and that they even knew my name, but she looked at me with a mixture of pity and deep suspicion. She clearly believed I was either a thief trying to cover my tracks with a ghost story, or that I was suffering from a serious mental breakdown. Feeling the walls closing in and knowing that a formal investigation would eventually uncover my dance moves in the blind spots and the other items I had taken, I made a sudden, impulsive decision. I quit on the spot. In my panicked mind, I believed that if I just walked away from the job and never looked back, I could leave the trouble behind. I gathered my few personal belongings and walked out of the mall for the last time, not even waiting for her response. The mall management did launch a full investigation into the thefts, but they never looked into the intruders I had reported. By some incredible stroke of luck, I was never caught or arrested for the things I had actually stolen over that year. Perhaps they figured it wasn't worth the legal hassle after I disappeared, or maybe they just wanted to move on. Regardless, the experience effectively ended my time in security and left me with a debt of guilt and fear that I still carry today. Looking back on that period of my life, I still struggle to process what truly happened in that mall. I have no history of mental illness or hallucinations, and I haven't seen or heard anything strange in the 20 years since I left that job. I know how insane it sounds to describe invisible voices laughing in the dark, but I know what I heard. I know there was a figure standing in that aisle waving at me, even if the camera didn't see it. The fact that they knew my name remains the most haunting detail of all, a permanent reminder that while I was busy looking for blind spots in the security system, something else was watching me from the places I couldn't see. I was a bad person for what I did, but I truly believe that mall held secrets much darker than a few stolen pairs of sneakers. I got out, and I never plan on going back.